question, and it's about motivating players. And I've heard like different coaches, very different opinions on this. And I think obviously the level of football you're playing, it depends on how much you're going to deal with this. But, you know, if you're looking at a player that you think has some potential, that you would say their biggest issue is motivation, right? How do you go about, you know, I mean, I guess it's different if they don't have a passion for the game, then maybe, you know, their potential doesn't matter. If they're not interested in doing it, then that's their right to have. But, you know, if you have a player that says, hey, I want to achieve these goals, I want to play U Sport football or NCAA football, but motivation to you is kind of the thing getting in their way. How do you go about, you know, helping maybe spark that fire in a player? You know, I've heard coaches say, well, we don't coach motivation, we recruit it. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But, you know, that doesn't really help. And if you're a high school coach, great, we don't recruit. So we, you know, and I've heard other guys say, no, like, you know, like coach was talking about setting an example for your players. Like, you know, you're in a situation where as a high school coach, you know, probably 2/3 of your roster doesn't have elite habits. Even if you're on the best team, you got to teach those habits. So how do you guys go about, you know, trying to motivate players, I guess is the short way to ask the question. And again, feel free to jump in on it. It doesn't need to be a super long answer. Sure, Jordan?
Yeah, I can jump on that. I think for us, the biggest part was taking our older guys, right, and having them, you know, really monitor that. And I think, you know, Coach Nagy said that, you know, having the older guys really, you know, for me, the biggest motivation I always found when I was playing, and I was the worst in the gym. Like, I hated it. It was awful. It just was not my favorite thing. But what motivated me was my teammates, right, and wanting to, you know, bring the best out of myself so I can, you know, take us to the next level, right? Because it takes all of us. So I think that's been a big focus of us, you know, even with our workouts right now, because, you know, I can't be there, right? Because the school and everything going on, and I'm not a teacher at the school, so I can't be there motivating these kids, right? So you know, we've been putting a lot on our older guys that want to work hard. Our program's kind of, you know, it's been a big powerhouse in Alberta, and it's kind of tanked in the last 5 years, and we're trying to build it back up. So it's really, you know, it really starts with those grade 12 guys. And if they're not motivated, then how is, you know, the grade 9 kid with all this potential going to be motivated, right? And I think if the grade 9 kid shows up to, you know, for us, because we go grade 10, 11, and 12, if the grade 9 kid comes to spring camp, you know, and the senior kid's going, hey, you got a lot of skill, you got a lot of talent, and this is, you know, what I want to, you know, take what I've learned and put it onto you. It's more of the same message just getting pushed to them. And I think that's, for me, I think it's a great way to get the best out of your players, and especially those unmotivated guys, because it's, you know, it's hard. You see a kid with a bunch of potential, and he just, you know, doesn't want to finish the rep, doesn't want to do all the little things to make himself so much better. And in the end, like you said, you know, if he doesn't have that love for football, he just is never going to do it. So I think that's identifying that first, and, you know, being really blunt. Like, sometimes, you know, I had a kid, we started spring sessions, crazy COVID sessions right now, where we can get 10 guys on the field, and, you know, we got kids who have been working hard in the gym and stuff. And I just said, you know, why do you want to be here? Right? Why? Like, if you don't want to be here, and then and you're not going to use all your potential, then what's the point? Right? And sometimes, you know, then the light bulb flips on, right? And then the kids, you know, now he hasn't been a problem for a week, and we'll see if it lasts. And some of these kids, you know, they put on good for a couple of weeks, and then they go back to their old ways. So it's just staying on top of them. And yeah, and I think building that, honestly, in your culture too, right? A culture of working hard and wanting to be at that next level. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
For sure. Anyone else want to touch on that one? And don't feel like you all have to, like, as these questions come in, if you feel like you got something great, awesome. If you want to pass and wait for the next question, that's great too.
I'll chime in for a sec. Just I coach with a guy named Mike Tanner, who's been coaching for 50 years. He's the co-head coach with me, but I think I've always been kind of more of a sink or swim type of approach to some of these players that you come across sometimes. And one thing that I've just took from him, that I've seen him do over and over again, is just when he's addressing the team as a collective, is calling those guys out individually for good things and for bad things. You know, I'm not saying this is a solution to every kid, but as a whole, typically kids will respond fairly well if they're being called out in front of their peers. And you know, you can say it's a little insensitive sometimes or whatever, but I think truth matters. I think accountability matters. I think their teammates need to know where the coaches stand on certain players, because those players certainly see it on how those other players are acting. And if they're not in a position, whether it's because he's some stud and he's huge and he's intimidating and they don't want to say anything, then so be it. But I find coaches who can effectively call players out for the good and the bad, that garners everybody else. So I would say that's just a tip. It's certainly not a solution.
For sure. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
Just to add something with motivation. In my case, I get to recruit some kids, so it's mainly the academic side. Sometimes they lack some the motivation with it. So sometimes if they're good athletes, present them for future opportunities, whether it's youth sports football or NCAA. So that helps certainly. We talked about small term or short term goals. Like 1 week at a time. So if with academic, I get a kid and we go over his weekly plan and what are you going to do today and tomorrow and at the end of the week I meet the kid again. So like short-term plans and go a week by week. Like a term in CJEP is 15 weeks. So we divide it up in a small chunk and hopefully we get it done in 15 weeks. But that helps.
Yeah, and that was something like I spent a little time at Laurier when I was doing some academic work with them as well, and I found that like you talk about the weekly plan, that's something, and I preach to our high school guys, and when I had a bunch of university coaches come talk to our high school players a couple weeks ago now, but we had 8 weeks of university coaches come in, and every single time they talked about, okay, you gotta academically, you got to plan your week. I would just stop them and be like, see, there's another person. You don't have to hear it from me. That's, our 7th U Sport head coach that just said that to you. So when I bug you about that in September, right. And I think that's critical. Like the weekly academic stuff. I think a lot of these guys, if they've struggled in school, and I'm a teacher as well, it's my day job, but when kids have this built up frustration with school, they really don't think that they stop believing their choices matter, and then they make choices that shock us, right? And you're like, how could you not start that essay? And they some of it actually stems from they don't believe their choices matter. They think some of them think they'll be able to pull it out at the very last minute. Some of them think that they're going to struggle no matter what. They're really afraid that they're going to do all the things that you ask them to do and they're still going to fail, because that's been they might be a grade 11 student and they've had 10 years of hating school. And now you're telling them school's the key to their football future. And I think breaking it down, like you talk about, coach, you got a 15-week course in CEGEP. Can you be successful in this 1 week plan? Like in these next 7 days, you got to do A, B, C, and D. If you do that, we're going to deem that as successful. And that's going to give you a chance. I think that, if you can find a way to communicate that to players and students, I think that's critical, because a lot of them, they make decisions and you're like, how, like you're throwing these opportunities away. And a lot of times they're making those decisions purely off the thought, whether it's conscious or not, that their decision isn't actually going to matter, that they're going to struggle either way. So that's a huge point. If anyone has anything else on that, happy to hear it. There's a couple great questions in here about engaging alumni, which I think could be great to hear different perspectives from across the country. So there's 2 questions. One from Chaz Douglas, speaking of my former high school teammates, actually, offensive coordinator at Centennial High School, now at the rival high school, but that's okay. So he was asking about, have you ever started a booster club for your high school football program? If so, what advice would you have on making that successful? And then Zach Scotto asked strategies or ideas around engaging alumni to help build your program. I guess those 2 kind of things go hand in hand. So I thought I'd ask them both at once there. Has anyone done that? Like, does any of you guys' programs have like a Friends of Football or alumni group there? Sure. I see a couple guys nodding their head. Feel free. Anyone can hop in and take that first.
I can chime in on that there. Just the booster club or the Friends of Football thing, that's actually something that I'm actively working on right now. So I'm interested to hear what other people have to say about that, so we can steal some ideas. But as far as engaging alumni, I actually have on my 11 guys I coach with, 7 of them are alumni from a high school. So some of them that have gone beyond football. They played at U Sports level, come back to the area, and I'm lucky enough to have them on my coaching staff. And I find that it helps with engaging the other alumni that they played with whenever their segment was in high school and that, and kind of brings that connection back, because I've had a bunch of other alumni that maybe don't have time to coach, but have come out and run some drills for us 1 day or 2 days a little bit, and it's kind of brought them back to Assumption football a bit for us. So I found that having alumni coaches, and I know that's not always an opportunity for everyone, but it's been good for us. And I honestly, the social media aspect, regardless of the age of your alumni, or from the most part, they're all going to have some sort of social media. Whether it's the younger ones with Instagram and Twitter, or even the older ones through Facebook and stuff. So I've really worked hard at trying to engage a lot of our alumni. Our school has an alumni for the whole school, alumni Facebook page. I've gotten a lot of feedback from football alumni on that with some of my posts, and just reaching out and making the connections with the former players. And the way I tell the kids, and when I introduce new players to their coaches every year, like these, and I point to my coaches, these coaches here, they were wearing cleats on this very same field that you're on right now. They know what Assumption football is about. They've been here. Their sweat is in the ground that you're walking on, right? So I find that gives a lot of buy-in for current players, and understanding, okay, these guys, they're one of us, so they know what this is about, right? And just the social media engagement with some of the other alumni, I found it's been nice to have some social media conversations with alumni from 15 years ago who they only remember our program as a junior program when we first started, or a varsity program the first couple of years after that, and only remember losing every game, right? So it's kind of been nice to update them on where our program stands now, and making that connection with them over social media has been quite successful for us.
Awesome. Anyone else want to hop on that question?
Yeah. With us at St. Andrews, the alumni runs rampant over the years, which has been great. And this is only my second year here, but last year I started a Friends of Football Booster newsletter. I started with a newsletter, which was really good, took really well. I received emails from guys that were graduates in the 50s, and so it was incredible to get that kind of a reception back about the newsletter. And so now I'm going to continue that quarterly, kind of keep them up to speed with what's going on with some of our kids who are pursuing the next level, what they're doing in their lives academically as well. And then one thing I've added with the social media piece was a throwback Thursdays for our guys, and for the history of our alumni who have gone on to the next level. And the list is quite extensive. So I know I've got lots of time to get through everybody, so which is real good. And some who've gone on to play professionally as well. And so I've done that, and that's kind of, you start tagging people, and it's kind of really heightened our program in that sense as well with our alumni. And that's really, the alumni love seeing that kind of stuff. And I've heard, and I've gotten some amazing feedback from all of them. And I think I may have mentioned it earlier, but due to the CFL lockout, a number of our alumni in the CFL, following proper protocol this fall, we were fortunate enough here at St. Andrews, we were in-person learning, and we practiced 5 days a week following the guidelines by Football Canada. So, we had masks, we had them on campus, and we did some guest coaching for us, Peter Godber and Fraser Sopek, some great guys that were here not too long ago. So we got them back on campus, and they really enjoyed their time, and the kids really enjoyed having them there.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I just, in my limited experience with it, like you said, Coach Nagy and Coach Leo, like when people actually come, when you get people to come back to practice, it's super meaningful. I think not just for your current players, but, if you send someone an email, that's one thing that'll trigger some nostalgia or whatever. But if you actually get them, back on campus, even if it's for 30 minutes of a practice one day, when you're setting up your golf tournament or whatever it is, like whatever you're looking to get out of that alumni later on, obviously, they'll be much more receptive to it. Anyone else have any strategies or tips there?
One tip I would say, there's a whole business and industry behind engaging with alumni and fund development. And I would encourage anybody just to, within your own city, just reach out to someone in that industry and pick their brain a little bit. It's an art in many ways. I think there's ways to engage with alumni just for them to show up at your games and your events and your practices. And there's a way for them to write one big check a year, or there's a way to have them show up at an auction that you run. And I think every alumni will have a different take on what they'd like to do to contribute. And that's not always financial, but in many cases, and probably what a lot of high school programs are struggling with, is to get some extra funding through the door. So I would certainly say to take a professional approach to it and talk with some people about, how you can build that a business essentially is what you're doing. It's been a big success for us. We have a big marquee event every year. It's a big auction that we run around one of our it's the same date every single year. It's the same Friday night, and we try to bring as many local people in. We have an annual kind of mail out campaign that probably should be going into the 21st century now with more email, but it's still running on direct mail, and it's great. And our alumni, if they're either getting an FYI about the season ahead and big dates, or they're gonna maybe contribute something financially to the program that's within what they can afford. So for us, it's really just it's a big picture look at it, and as well, I would encourage people to reach out and it's a tough thing to do as a high school football coach in the middle of the season when you've got a million other things to worry about. But that's also the best time you could probably raise some money for your program. So I'm happy to share any tips that we have that we've been successful with, but we don't take a dime from the school. We're entirely run independently through our alumni, and that's how we're able to function. But it's important, and it's important to know kind of who's the players that, or the people that might want to contribute a little bit more for those bigger items every couple of years, or the ones that just want to write an annual check that might be small, but those add up with big numbers. So that would be my tip. I mean, I think just building consistency around it, and so that people know every year or every month or whatever it is that there's a way that they can contribute, and then responding to what they want in return, if there is anything. Maybe it's sending them a T-shirt. Maybe it's giving them free tickets to all your home games, whatever it is. I mean, find a way to keep that relationship and say thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, my partner's in university fundraising, and I just got a text being like, that guy knows what he's talking about. Good stuff. So big, the Yonkers House approves of that message for sure. I think that's one of the things I think like we all think about, like you said, Coach, about being someone that creates solutions. Right? Like that I think it's easy to think about what you don't have. You flick on Instagram and you see what IMG's got going on down there. And it's like, yeah, cool. That it would probably, all our lives would be easier if we had that. But like what solution can you find to, fix one problem you have, first, and go from there? Cause I think there's, the kids benefit. And like, I mean, Jason, like I'm around Jason's program. I recruit that area. We've recruited guys from Assumption to both Laurier and guys that played on my summer team. Like you see like high school football is such a beneficial product, or CEGEP football or summer league football for these kids who are, whether it's 13, 14, 15 as the young guys or guys who are getting close to going to the university level. And if every program, I'm glad I got that question, because if every program thought as much, about how they could build their program, like literally financially from those relationships as they do about, are we going to run this RPO or that RPO or 3 down front, 4 down front, there might be more possibilities out there that could help kids. So that was a great question. Anyone else have anything they want to add on that?
I can kind of talk about that. So we've had our foundation and our parents group for a while, and Tanner, who's the co-head coach and teacher at the school, the funniest thing, because I asked him the same thing. I said, what are we doing, for fundraising? I have all these ideas. And he's like, great. He's like, honestly, I don't deal with it because legally he's not allowed to because of him teaching and it's a foundation, all this stuff. And he said, but I just empower our parents. And I mean, we get 75 kids a year between our junior and senior team. So every year we have, he's like, we have the same meeting and we say, who wants to step up? And he's like, and you'd be surprised how many people, right? And using them as a resource too. I know, I went to a different high school in the same city, and we had the same thing, a booster club, and we wanted to redo our locker room, and all they did was reach out to the parents, and boom, all done like that, right? And because they care, right? And they want their kids to enjoy the experience, and so you got to use them as a resource. That's a big thing. And, and we've been lucky. We've had parents come back and we like our main board of our foundation is like people who don't even have kids involved in the program anymore, and all they're doing is trying to find ways to make money. And it makes my job a lot easier because I don't have to worry about that, and I still do and still try to help. But you really just empower your parents because they want their kids to have just as good as an experience as anyone else does. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Again, just cut me off if anyone else wants to add anything in there. There's a couple other really good questions I want to make sure that we get to. And thanks, guys. We're over the time, so if anybody's got to go, feel free. I appreciate you guys giving the time. I know depending on where you're at in the country, it's a different time of day. Coach Dyer, you're the one up the latest right now. Thank you for that. But if anyone's got to go, totally understand. A couple more questions I'll throw it here to anyone who can stick around. But those were great ones and have me thinking a lot about what I can do with my program. How do you go about coaching your coaches? Like, how do you go about that process? That's obviously a big question. And whether that's like staff development, maybe or purely, hey, like we're going to run this concept and it's new to a coach on your staff. How do you go about, kind of teaching the coaches that you're with and empowering those coaches to then deliver that knowledge to the players? That's a tough one. That has me thinking personally about our own practices for sure.
Well, if I could jump in, Jackson, we were very fortunate here as well. We've I think Coach Jason may have said or someone else did, but we've got 7, on our varsity staff and 7 on our JV staff, which is phenomenal, and guys that have, incredible amount of experiences at the youth sports and professional level. So we kind of utilize those guys, and we have, our own type of coaches clinics here. We get a lot of PD time, which is awesome here. So we incorporate some of that, as well. Like, for example, even 2 weeks ago, Lori hosted a great Zoom coaches clinic, and we had four coaches or so in a room, with the Zooms on, and we had a whiteboard, and, it was a great PD for us right after, or in between during breaks and stuff like that. So we definitely utilize the time. Most of our staff, out of those 14, 10 of them are faculty members. So obviously you can see the investment by the school as well with regards to coaching as well. So, but yeah, we usually will just take, guys with probably the most experience at many different levels and coach and find times to make sure that we work together with our coaches. The big thing I think is terminology for kids, right? So if we can get on the same terminology right across the board, even with our JV program, not necessarily, I'm not one, although I direct the program here, I'm not one to tell our JV head coach, this is what you have to run. I just talk about terminology so that when the kids come up, they're familiar with the terminology. I want to empower the coaches. You mentioned that, Jackson. It's important that we empower and allow them to use their creative minds offensively or defensively. And gosh, sometimes you learn some things from your junior staff. You're like, wow, that worked. You're watching a game, you asked them about that. But I think the terminologies are the key, and then finding time for sure. Over the summer, our plan is to get together at one of the cottages too of our JV head coach, if we can do that via COVID, with the situation, and have a PD day as well too. So that's what we're trying to do here.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Something we did this winter with COVID is every other Thursday night, basically coaches in Quebec, there's a curfew at 8:30 here. So since I guess January, so 8:30 we had a coaches meeting on Zoom, with some beverages, and we're whether it's the all 24 question that they were showing some formations and stuff. So just talking balls, stuff that some coaches I've seen during clinics. So we were just sharing ideas and talking balls for an hour. So every other Thursday through the winter. So that was something positive for us during COVID.
Anybody else have anything they want to add there? There's a lot of good questions. We won't get to them all, unfortunately, but anyone want to add to that there about coaching on your staff?
I think empowering them is huge, especially in the film room as well. Like, we have a big staff for, our high school is 10, 11, 12, but we've got 14, 15 on staff every year. So when we break up in film room every week, it's by position, and it's really important for those coaches to lead those film sessions in their position groups. I find it empowers them to not only teach the game, but also prepare the kids for what's coming at their position groups. And as long as you're meeting with them and everyone's aware of the the lessons that need to be learned and the prep that needs to be done. I think it builds on each other over the course of the season, and you'll get a little bit more buy-in from the players as well, from those positional coaches. So, and I would just say, let coaches make mistakes, and that's if you're building a program, you're going to have coaches that have a variety of experience coming in and out. And I certainly remember my first day coaching after playing, and I wouldn't say I was well equipped or well trained to start, and I certainly learned a lot of lessons. And I think just not getting on guys because there might be one or two things that you want to change, just finding the opportunities to reinforce, what are those key messages that you're doing as an OC or as a head coach or a DC, and then doing it privately, because you certainly don't want to kind of correct another coach in front of players. I would say that would be a no-no for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something I was super fortunate as a young coach. Like my university career, ended 2 years in because of injuries, and Coach Baltz let me hop on as a coach. I often think back to that now, still as very much a young coach, but at least I've had some years and doubled up by doing the Laurier season and then the summer season. I've packed about as much football as I could in the last 10 years. And I think just remembering back to like there's some things that I do now that I look back on, man, like I used to do this or try and do this way, and I think about how much I wish I'd changed that. And, just empowering coaches, I think, is a huge point. And I think you're going to get more out of them. Like you're looking for those guys, like Farhan said, to have really meaningful roles in your program. Like you want them to be filling meaningful roles. You have to give them a meaningful role to fill for sure. This seems like a really good question to end off on. So we've all missed, maybe Coach Dyer hasn't, and we'll try not to hate him for it, but we've all missed like a full year, right, of football now or more. How is that going to impact you and your program when you get back to the field? What will you do differently? And I'm talking about when we get back to real, we're preparing for a full season, hopefully the fall, whatever. Whenever that happens, try and keep it positive. Whenever that happens, what will you do differently with your program than maybe you would do every other year the rest of your career, because kids are coming off, 12, 16, 18 months, hopefully no more than that, but 18 months of whether it's inactivity or at least, it's been a while since anybody's been in an inside run. What are you going to do differently, as a head coach in your program? Do you want to take that one, Jason?
Yeah, and it's funny that this was a question there too, because my coaches and I were just talking about this the other day. Essentially for our program, like usually as we all do, you have, you get the kids that come from grade 11 to senior, then they graduate up to 12, and then you get a chunk that stay for that fifth year, that old grade 13. Going down rosters the other day for what we may potentially have in the fall, if we have football, fingers crossed. It's going to be a completely brand new senior team that we're going to have. I may have 4 or 5 guys that are sticking around for a fifth year. But essentially brand new teams. Our junior team, completely brand new, right? Those kids have all moved on through into senior ages. So we talked about it as a staff about we're going to obviously have to get back to some fundamentals, some basics, right? Some of these kids, yes, they may be football kids who have played as they've grown up, but they obviously haven't played in our system we run at senior. So getting back to simplifying it, back to some fundamentals. We know there's going to have to be, some added time for learning to go on, some, simplification of schemes for these kids to be able to grasp it. For us in our league, the senior game is much faster, but bigger, faster, stronger than our junior league. And these kids wouldn't have had the time to adjust to that, right? We're going to have kids that, maybe playing their first downs of senior football as a grade 12, right? So they haven't had that growth time that comes with being part of the program as a grade 11. So a big thing for us is going to be back to fundamentals, back to simplification of what we do, and allowing our league's going to allow us a little more prep time. We get a certain number of days of practice outside of the season, and they've already said they're going to allow us some more prep time, a few more days added to that, so that we can build what we haven't had for a year and a half.
Anybody want to hop on that one next?
I mean, I would echo that for sure. I can tell you, we didn't play in the fall, but about a week ago, we found out we were going to have some sort of a spring season, and that starts in 2 weeks. So our coaches weren't, no one was really prepared. Very good news, but it was a bit of a scramble for sure, and we're going through that right now. Very fortunate to be going through it, but I mean, we're changing the game. We're going from 12-man to 10-man, just from a numbers restriction. So, or whether it's our coaches or whoever, we're scrambling right now just to kind of, we've started practicing and teaching the game, as you said, going back to fundamentals. But one thing I think we're going to try to do is just take a step back and just curb our expectations about everything we're trying to execute, and completely, not completely start from scratch, but expect that the very basic fundamental skills and understanding of the game are going to be scaled back a bit. And I can't speak for, the Ontario and Quebec and, out west, but I expect the quality of play to probably be down in our league, generally speaking, as a collective. And so what are we going to do as a team in that environment, and what does that mean from teaching the kids for future years, and what does that mean to try and get some wins this year? And I think really that's going to be really building it up, and hope that come playoff time we've reached some sort of a pinnacle of what we can be. But I would echo the fundamentals, and really just maybe going and throwing out my general week one kind of install, and rethinking about how that works and what that's going to look like.
Okay, great. And I'm assuming you guys, everyone else, if you want to add anything, jump in here. But I'm sure that it's pretty common across the board that we're going to have to go from, some people have been able to have like 10 people in groups, like you said, Jordan, to maybe periods of practice and then periods of inactivity and back and forth, and that's going to be a huge challenge. But hopefully, and it was funny when I started this a year ago, or just about a year that I've been doing this. It was kind of I'm a teacher, so when schools got shut down, obviously I was home a lot more than I'm used to, and it was kind of a project to help really just get connected with other people and try and keep learning through it. And I'm glad that I didn't know it was going to be 2 years till our next, well, 2 years maybe, but a year and a half at least till our next game here in Ontario, because I don't know if I would have had the stamina to try and do it. But to all the coaches that are watching this, and to you guys that have hopped on here, thanks so much for being a part of this and continuing to try and improve what I think is one of the great things we have in school communities, and that's athletics. And whether that's the high school level, CEGEP level, or summer football league level, some of our guests were today, it's not always easy in Canada because there's going to be very little financial gain for you as a coach to continue to improve, right? I'm not going to get hired as a phys ed teacher because we won 8 games instead of 6 games. Right. And, so I'm always, blown away by, how engaged and how excited a lot of coaches in the Canadian high school game, are still to learn, because they recognize the value of what it brings to not just their players individually, but their community, whether it's at their high school or CEGEP or, in their community, like what I get to do in summer football. So thanks very much, guys, for being on here, and, all the best. Hopefully everyone stays healthy, and, good luck next coming weeks. 10-man football, Coach Dyer. Let us know what that looks like. That's sounding interesting. The X's and O's will be fun for sure. But thanks so much, guys, and everybody.
Thanks, Jackson.
Thanks, Jackson.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Take care, everyone.